Insurtech Australia webinar, Focus on Digital Transformation. I'm Rita Yates, the CEO of Insurtech Australia. We're just going to take a few minutes to wait for all of our attendees to start logging on, which shouldn't take too long at all. But I thought I might just begin. Most of us here by now would have come across the meme, who led your digital transformation in 2020, the CEO, CTO, or COVID-19? And, you know, whilst we all have a bit of a chuckle at that one, the reason it's actually quite funny is there's quite a bit of truth to it, I think. So we're really looking forward to today's discussion around digital transformation. And looking forward to some robust questions, hopefully, from the audience as well. You can lodge your questions in the Q&A portion of the screen, so you can do that at any time during the session, and we'll get to those towards the end. It's great that we've got some really great speakers here with us today too as well, and we'll be introducing them shortly. Just to quickly touch on some of the other events that we have coming up in the Insurtech Australia schedule. You know, whilst we really miss running our events face-to-face, it's great that we can still do some of these events in a virtual format and have you know, quite large audiences join us for these sessions, which is fantastic. Next month, we'll be running an event together with our APAC members of the Global Insurtech Alliance, which is the first Global Insurtech Alliance virtual event that we have run, together with Insurtech Asia, Insurtech NZ, and Tokyo FinTech. So that should be a really good discussion around Insurtech in the APAC region. And then the following day, we have an event co-hosted by RAC's Better Labs Ventures, which is focused around what they're looking for currently in their investments with startups and scale-ups. And following that in July, we will be releasing our 2020 Australian Insurtech Ecosystem Report together with EY, and we'll be running a launch event in a virtual format with a TBA date, so we'll let you know when that is going to happen. Okay, so I'm now going to introduce your moderator for today's session, who many of you have come across in the past within our ecosystem, Vanessa Dobson. She has been an absolute champion of Insurtech and was co-founder of Insurtech Australia back in 2017 and currently acts as our company secretary. So I'm going to hand over to Vanessa now to moderate the discussion.
Thank you, Rita, and good afternoon. Welcome from myself to what happens to be the second webinar that Insurtech Australia has hosted today. As you know, though, the topic for this webinar is about a focus on digital transformation. Now, surprisingly, and dare I say yet again, some companies have stalled their investment into digital or digitalisation, whilst others are fast-tracking their digital transformation. So today we will hear from four industry experts in their respective fields who cover the span of the insurance industry on this topic. You will have opportunity to engage as well. So we will have a couple of polls where we'll seek your answers to a series of questions, and we aim to allow ample time for Q&A at the end of the session. So in terms of flow and structure today, first up, each of our four panellists will have a few minutes each for some opening commentary. We will then go to the first poll. That will be followed by a panel discussion where we'll cover off three key topics. We'll move to poll number 2, and then we'll go into the Q&A. So please note that the Q&A tool, as Rita mentioned earlier, that's down the bottom of your respective Zoom webinar window. So please utilise that tool if you wish to raise a question. I will do my best to ensure that we address as many questions as possible in the time that we have. All right, I think that's enough with the housekeeping and what's going on. So let's move into the opening comments from the panellists. Now, in the interest of time, I will not formally introduce each of our panellists today. Please go and check out their respective profiles. As you will see, there is a wealth of experience here, and feel free to reach out and make contact if you wish to engage with them further. So let's get underway. Each panellist will cover off 3 points. And those points are what they are seeing in the market right now from a customer perspective. Secondly, the successes and opportunities that they see. And lastly, the challenges that they are facing. So the first cab off the rank is Jamie Smith from Hollard. Thanks, Jamie.
Cool. Hey, good day, everybody. So I'm Jamie Smith. I'm the CIO of Hollard. Some of you might not know who Hollard are. We are basically the 7th largest insurer here in Australia, about 1.4 billion bucks. You don't see our brand because we're often the brand behind other people. So we sit behind Woolworths, Real Coogan, and the like. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of a perspective from an internal insurance company. Obviously, there's no playbook for where we are right now. I'm sure many companies have had to invoke kind of DR and BCP plans, but where we are at the moment is super brand new. So everything is a first for a number of organisations. So if I think about what Hollard have been trying to do over the last eight weeks and what we've been seeing in the market from both our internal point of view and from the customers and the customers that we deal with every day, we've had a number of key challenges, of course. The first one is to get everybody digitized and able to work from home to maintain that kind of customer support that we had. Like many insurers, we had a fairly low online posture, and by that I mean we could do quote and buy online, but a number of other services that we had actually still relied on our call center infrastructure, which would either be here in Australia or where we've partnered in other countries. So we've had a number of challenges just to keep the business and operation running. And our operating model also was structured very much around people inside a building. So if you think about our claims teams or our underwriters teams, they were very much used to being in a pod. And when people would get stuck, they could put their hands up and actually challenge and get questions done while people were in the physical building. So what we recognized that we had in our business already around some inefficiencies and some high friction costs actually got significantly exposed when we've shifted everybody outside of our building, and now we've had to rely on tech for people to be able to converse with people. That's probably one of the biggest challenges that we've faced in actually reorganizing our teams to actually work in a distributed model. To then try and keep the customer angle happy there as well. What we've seen is a shift over the last probably 6 to 8 weeks, particularly in our customer base, of them being less reliant on wanting to call the call center. So certainly in the original COVID-19 part, we saw a whole load of calls fluctuate into our call center around people wanting to know whether they were covered, whether to get refunds or cancellations, especially in the travel pillar of our business. But what we've seen now is a much more likely swing over into digital channels. So customers are actually also having their habits changed as a result of where we are. So whether that is that they're now doing more self-service online, and we've exposed more capabilities in there, or whether they're being more comfortable to kind of invite people into their home in the same way as we are today, where we're all on this web chat. And we're seeing that particularly in some of our claims spaces where we've used some InsurTech technology to be able to push that out to people's homes. So from a success point of view, getting everybody out of the building is a big tick. Then looking at our working model has also been a bit of a tick, and then trying to plug shortcomings or to try and find new ways to solve the same problem with tech is also kind of there on our roadmap. As was kind of said at the beginning, some companies are deciding to pare back some of their spend on digital transformation. We're actually going to try and double down our efforts on that, because we see this as a golden opportunity for us to redefine our entire target operating model when we come back. These are the kind of things that you get to do once kind of in a lifetime. and as the new incoming CIO to Hollard, this has kind of written my IT strategy and then doubled down the funding that I'm going to get to it. So we're actually looking at our entire operating model and where is appropriate for us to go back to a building or multiple buildings across Australia, or where we're actually going to put the investment in the longer term use of technology, and we're pairing that right back to the tin, and then we'll build up through the app stack. So perfect for us. We see this as a golden opportunity.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks so much, Jamie. And it's great to hear the positivity around that opportunity and how it is present now and very real. Okay, so we're going to jump to Annette King from Galileo Platforms. And Annette actually holds a number of roles in other facets of her world as well. So she's got to see quite a range of the market and the different players within it. So really looking forward to hearing your views, Annette.
Thanks, Vanessa. I'm the co-founder and chair of Galileo Platforms, and which is an Insurtech company. I'm also a non-exec director at Swiss Re, so a different part of the value chain. What I would like to start with the consumer. I think what we're seeing at the start of 2020 in the Australian environment in particular is the bushfires, the storms, the hail, the cyclones, and then the pandemic from a medical perspective. And so what we're seeing from a consumer perspective is more awareness of the need for insurance. And secondly, like every other industry over the last couple of months, the insurance industry has then needed to pivot to actually engage their consumers digitally rather than through other methods. And we've seen that through retail. We've seen all the kids do their education and pivot online overnight. And so what we're seeing is far more engagement, whether it's sales or claims or servicing. The insurance industry has needed to engage with their client base online. So they're the two kind of background things that we're seeing from the end consumer perspective. I think in the short term, there have been challenges, not so much for the businesses that I've been involved with in terms of looking after staff safety and working through the work from home element, but in terms of the businesses that we interact with, that has definitely taken some bandwidth and headspace for insurers and brokers and other distributors. Just working through for 2 or 3 months, how do they get everybody to safely work from home, continuity of service for their consumers. What that has meant from an engagement on the digitisation programs is, firstly, if an organisation already had a program underway, that has just continued, is what we've been seeing. But for organisations that were considering investment, they have delayed those decisions while they have sorted through those primary safety and initial servicing elements for their existing business. However, that has then caused, from a new business perspective, many insurers to see a 20, 30, even 50 or 60% drop off in revenue if they have been reliant on face-to-face intermediation. And so while this has taken pause for any immediate investment in new initiatives, it's actually sped up and fast-tracked their need to diversify into digital distribution even more quickly. So that's positive for the whole InsurTech ecosystem because the demand is sped up.
Great. Okay, thanks, Annette. And yeah, some big revenue hits there, obviously. And I sense there'd probably be a greater sense of urgency to move and act from those organisations.
That's right.
Wonderful. Okay, so now we're going to jump to Mike Lovegrove from JRNY, InsurTech startup within New Zealand, but obviously with customers elsewhere. Love to hear your views, Mike, on what you're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. I think to start with, Annette and Jamie have summarised this quite well, I think, and I'm not necessarily going to add too much else to to that discussion, but just touching on the key things here. The first thing is that customer habits are changing, and both Annette and Jamie actually touched on this, that people are wanting to engage in a digital means all the time. So you think about that customer journey life cycle, and the customer now wants to have that experience through the digital touch points, nothing else. Because they're used to that in all other industries. Now that was here before COVID came along, and now it's just emphasized that it's 100% necessary. And so insurers that, they might have had a digital transformation program in place prior to COVID. Some of them are, like Hollard, they're speeding up and they're saying, hey, let's invest more time, energy, and resource into this because it's absolutely necessary to the success of our business. And then there's other insurers that we're seeing that are almost bunkering down and wanting to weather the storm. And I'm of the opinion that those that are wanting to bunker down are the ones that are not going to get through this the same way. The organizations like Hollard that are actually using this as an opportunity are going to be the ones that thrive on the other side, because they will have the technology, they will have the customer engagement that every single customer is now demanding. And from a journey perspective on the challenges that we face, because I think this is worthwhile for the InsurTechs that are out there. It's not like our problems are probably good problems in a sense, where we're able to work remotely, so that's not an issue. And the new world kind of lends itself to Journey's offering. I mean, we help insurers to digitize that customer life cycle and the customer experience. So our biggest problem is actually scaling up along that as that demand comes in.
Okay, that sounds like a good problem to have for Journey in that sense. Now, Dan, you're no stranger to needing to scale up at speed. Love to hear your thoughts on those key topics and what you're seeing across the market.
Yeah, look, thanks, Vanessa. Yeah, I'm Dan, the founder of Codafication. It's been an interesting few months. I honestly couldn't have picked back in December or January the cause and effect of this growing pandemic. But I think what it's really unfolded in the industry, I guess, is a breakdown in some elements of the value chain or internal operations in large enterprise organisations that have somewhat taken for granted elements of having offshore processing plants or telephony overseas, and then different processing functions that are somewhat distributed. And then the pandemic's almost broken that linkage to the organisation. So even basic fundamental things like document capture and phone centre infrastructure has been put under stress. And I think that's exposed weaknesses in a large organisation. But in any situation, I think it creates opportunity, and especially for the InsurTechs that are out there focused on workflow or digitisation or optimisation of an operation of an organisation, and can bring new challenging thinking and speed to help clients put new services in the cloud or on premise. I think where the successes are at the moment, as I mentioned, is helping digitize anything at that customer facing piece. And the other panelists have touched on this, but more than ever, as we enter this new normal, being able to communicate in a digital way or transact documents or process the function of interfacing with an insurance organization is more critical than ever. Personally, for us, it's been a great situation where we've had growth because of COVID, because we're tackling different problems for different insurers related to that transformation. And I think it's a really great time in the industry, because no longer can digital transformation be rhetoric for shareholders or an internal labs project that doesn't see light of day. I think this situation really has exposed what business continuity means and what it means to enable workforces that are distributed or have fallback plans. And it's also highlighted the criticality of having software in the cloud that can be accessed remotely. And with that, there's opportunity as well, where we've seen of helping insurers implement technology which could help meet compliance and regulatory requirements for data security and management, and also enable them to roll all of their affiliated supply chains into a technology offering. Because normally what happens in these situations is everyone starts band-aiding together multiple different offerings, and those offerings mightn't meet the different security requirements of an insurer or the regulatory body. So there's opportunity there helping standardise and bring all the different stakeholders together and ensure compliance is met. And the challenges for us, I guess, is scaling up the business. So definitely there's multiple opportunities in play, multiple projects, you've got product roadmap. How do you meet sort of different demands and different requirements and satisfy your clients? And I think that's a challenge for any tech company, but it's an exciting challenge to face growing a business. But that's sort of our finger on the pulse of what we're seeing in the industry. And I think they say the new normal, but I think the new normal will definitely raise the tempo on digital transformation. And as Mike said, and Jamie touched on it about doubling down, I think the speed and the rate of digital transformation is only going to accelerate coming out of this. And I think for the incumbents or players that don't focus on that transformation journey, will soon be left in the dust. You know, and we're seeing large organizations like, you know, tier one insurers literally accelerate from, you know, proposal to contract in 3 weeks, procure, validate, implement, and sort of part the seas to make these projects happen, because it's exposed that risk and the need to do it. And I think they're going to hang on to that as maybe a new operating model, maybe not at that accelerated speed, but how do we bring down the timeline to engage and embed technology into the organisation. And I think where the competition is going to be set is in that tempo and delivery of transformation projects.
Fantastic. And that is almost shocking to hear, from proposal to contract in 3 weeks from an incumbent insurer. Not picking on the incumbents, I used to be part of one, but you know, that's pretty outrageous. I also had a slight shiver or chill when you talked about band-aiding together, because having seen under the hood of a number of organisations, there are a lot of band-aids and gaffer tape holding things together. It would be wonderful to move away from that at some stage. All right, now we've already got a few questions coming through, which is wonderful. Please continue to raise those. Before we go into the next section though, we're going to launch our first poll for the audience to respond to. So in a moment, that should appear on your respective screens, and we'll give you a couple of minutes to respond to that question. So we're really keen to understand, you know, has the degree of focus on digitalisation in your organisation changed in the last several months? So if you could vote on that, give us your response, and that should give us some real-time responses. Okay. All right, so what have we got here? So in the last 4 months, has the degree of focus on digitalisation in your organisation increased? So 65% of the audience is saying, yes, that's the case. 31% said it's remained about the same, and 4% have said that it has decreased. Great. Okay, thank you for your input there. Wonderful. All right, so now we're going to move into our panel discussion. So there are a few questions here for us to consider. So let's begin with the first one. So despite the doom and gloom forecasting in some quarters, some companies still achieve growth and even thrive in times of uncertainty. So why do you think that is? Perhaps if I could throw to you first, Mike.
Excuse me, my microphone was muted. In times of uncertainty, I think it can be really challenging to know what to do. And I think if we peel it back, it is you want to solve someone's problem. That's first and foremost. So if we lead with that, you know, we go after solving that problem, we're not bunkering down. We're like, okay, we need to solve this. We're not too sure exactly how we need to solve this, but we know we need to do something in this space. Putting something out there that we think may solve the problem, iterating on that and moving from there. And, you know, historically what we've seen in big transformation programs have been like, okay, this is a 5-year plan. etc. And that just doesn't work in this type of environment. It is, okay, what are the key problems? What is the smallest thing that we can do to prove a solution to this problem? And let's invest time and energy into proving that before we start to expand this. And that's where you can have something sign off in a matter of weeks to actually deploy something. And I think the key thing there is that actually you do something about it. Like, yes, you're not sure whether any of this is going to work. And that's kind of the irony of being in the insurance space where everything is so risk averse, is actually doing something that may not work, but knowing that we're figuring out a way to achieve this particular or solve this particular problem. I think the key is not bunker down, actually go out there and actively try and solve the problem. And by doing that, you'll move yourself towards actually thriving through an uncertain time.
Okay, great, thank you. Dan, what's been your experience in terms of focusing on a problem to drive next steps? And do you have some broader thoughts about how some companies thrive in times of uncertainty?
Yeah, I think it's where we've had our success is, having a business stakeholder in the organisation that you've got a relationship with, where you can clearly extract out what needs to be done and ideate a process and literally deliver in a week a solution that's going to meet all of their security requirements, and that they can take, to the board and present and, accelerate an outcome for the organisation. I think there's definitely opportunity to thrive at the moment. I guess, especially when you sort of move into the moment of truth in insurance, where claims is delivering on a promise that you've made from a customer, and be able to point of difference from your competition, especially in times at the moment, is only going to resolve in driving renewal or growth in GWP. And I think that's going to be more important than ever in these testing times of delivering on that promise. And more so than ever, digitisation of that is critical to deliver on it, especially when all the workforce, like Jamie said, aren't necessarily together to problem solve or help troubleshoot a customer's need. So that's where we've had some of our greatest success at the moment, is in that part of the value chain. And I think that'll continually improve to push the tempo on delivering on that promise.
Wonderful, thank you. And Annette, what are your thoughts on thriving in times of uncertainty?
I think it's got to do with the speed and agility and focusing on the end outcome. So the end outcome might be that customer journey, or the end outcome might be reducing your expenses or reducing your dependency on something that's not working in this environment. And it's amazing, when you focus on that end outcome, how some of the internal delays or barriers suddenly strip away. So it's being able to really focus on the end customer and deliver, and then keep iterating. And I think the digitization of businesses really enables people to try that new design and then see the data that comes out of that, whether it's speed of response or your claims ratios or your digital uptake and engagement. You can see the data very fast, and then you can feed that back into your ideation and improvement. And if you've got modern systems, then you can actually just keep iterating until you optimize. And that's what's going to differentiate the winners. A year from now, people are going to look back and say, okay, well, they did 5 iterations or 10 iterations until they got it right, versus those that just stuck with what they had prior to COVID.
The key part to that is also that iteration, isn't it? Because if you're going to get there faster by iterating, I think that's probably, I think, one of the key things that comes out of this discussion is start and continually iterate, and you'll get to the outcome faster than if you try and plan this without having any proof in the pudding.
Yeah, okay. And Jamie, your approach, your thoughts on thriving in uncertain times?
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with the three that have come already, but I'd add on to that. I think traditionally when tech has been tried to solve a business problem, it tries to solve many business problems at once. So then it gets stuck in a plethora of internal meetings inside of an organisation. And I think what the current situation has done is it's actually put a big red spot on all of the problems that are in an organisation. They've been super exposed, and therefore they can be picked off one at a time in terms of like a proof of value. So I talked before when we've had these chats around not a proof of concept but a proof of value, and then I like Michael's, just keep iterating off the top of, over the top of it. It doesn't stop the day that something goes in. You need to continuously invest and improve in it, and you will get there in the end. And you will make some mistakes, but if you're only doing one dot point at a time, you're only ever going to make one mistake at a time. So I think that's how organizations tend to thrive. And there's nothing like a crisis to focus the mind, of course.
So I knew of a CEO who was quite fond of saying that we'll move on to those things when the waters get smoother. Sounds to me like that's just not ever going to happen. And seems a little contrary to the, as you say, identifying the problems, picking things off, proof of value, moving forward, iterating, etc. Yeah. All right. So if we perhaps throw back to you again, Dan, and we touched on this a little bit, but given the current environment, where do you see InsurTech really playing a pivotal role?
Yeah, I think that dovetails nicely from the last point, actually. But like Jamie was saying, there's InsurTech offerings everywhere on the value chain that offer really great value in what they do specifically in that value chain. And I think for the large insurers, it's identifying what's best in breed or what's in market at the moment that's proven, validated, and that we know that we can stand up in the organisation. And I think it's about those InsurTechs obviously having the relationship to engage with an organisation, identify with the right stakeholder where in the value chain their software service sits to solve that problem. So I think there's massive opportunity everywhere, and especially in Australia for a lot of the other partners that I know and people probably on this call to be able to engage now and have faster conversations to help partners solve their problems. And then on the other side of the fence, I think it's really important for the insurers as well to be identifying, do they have the correct stack and architecture and frameworks to be able to plug in these best in breed services and partners that can solve these problems. And I think that's where a little bit the next wave of implementation is going to come unstuck if that process hasn't been identified and resolved in the large organisation of making sure there's the frameworks and tools and ability to plug in these solutions, and iterate them in and make sure that they're delivering value. And that's what's important, I guess, about new technologies moving forward and microservice architectures. So, there's going to be a bit on both sides of the pendulum that have to come together to enable this, but we're definitely seeing it. And I think the change is coming that's going to enable InsurTechs to embed into these ecosystems and plug into the insurer and assist them.
Great, thank you. Annette, do you have something to add to that in terms of the role, the kind of pivotal role InsurTechs have to play right now?
Yeah, I think that everyone knows that we're not going to snap back to where we were. There are changes, and the winners will be the people who pick the right changes from a consumer perspective. So InsurTechs are really about empowering the ecosystem to design what those differentiated models are, and then using the modern technologies and the data-driven business models and so forth, using the agility to keep iterating until we've optimized what those outcomes are, the business values are. And so I think InsurTech is, it's fast, it's mostly architected on microservices, so you can keep plugging and playing until you've got the differentiated proposition that you want to take to market. And also InsurTech is very cost effective compared to existing, older technology. So it is fast to deploy, see the results, and then keep iterating for improvement. So yeah, I think it's the equipment to design the business models that will win in the future.
Right. And Jamie, from your perspective, what have you seen that would support that kind of approach?
Yeah, look, I think there's for InsurTech, there's probably three great opportunities. To your point, Annette, I don't think there's any snap back at all. And I think any organisation that did snap back into the old way would probably just get left behind very, very quickly. They'll just find their cost base become so high. Well, it'd be just crazy. It would just be crazy. So I think if I think about what we're doing and what I've seen with some of the others, is there's obviously an immediate need still for InsurTech to kind of try to come and replace the Band-Aid, you know, rip the Band-Aid off with a horrible manual process or with some really aging technology fit for this current working environment, come in and help solve those immediate problems, but with a longer eye on the vision of the organization going forward. And I think that's where InsurTech can help with that future state target operating model around what does a carrier want to be, and what does it need to do to help its customers, and whether they're customers, mum and dad buying policies or organizations, or whether they're intermediated customers like where we are for Hollard, to be able to provide those services so that somebody else can pick up the components of the value chain and continue to take friction out of the end-to-end process. Because I think everyone is going to see a slip in revenue, and if you're not seeing, if you're not sorting your own engine room out whilst you do that, you're going to really, really struggle to then invest in the tech to get you to the next stage now, let alone come 6, 7, 8 months time.
Okay, all right. Now we've got a number of questions that have already come through, so I think we might launch our second poll just now, and then we'll move to the Q&A. So in a moment for the audience, there should be another poll appearing on your screens there. And it is about the proportion of people in your respective organisation which has been allocated to digital transformation. So perhaps if you could indicate what your experience is. Perhaps the trickier question might be what proportion of budget has been allocated to digital transformation. But let's start with people. That's a good place to start. Okay, looks like some results coming in. So about 33% of the audience has between 5 and 15% of their people allocated to digital transformation. Another 28% have less than 5%. 25% of you have more than 30% of your people allocated to digital transformation. So that's pretty telling. Great. Okay, thank you for your input there. We're going to move to the questions. Just aware of time, we've got half a dozen questions here, which look great. Thank you to those who have submitted those. Let's begin at the beginning. It's a question actually directed to you, Jamie, from Gerald Hartig. So with an organisation so used to face-to-face working, have you seen a significant change in productivity, and any areas more affected than others?
Yes. Okay. Yep. So we have. So if I think about my own team for starters, so if I look at the tech team, they were all very used to working distributed. So that was a very easy sell to get the remainder of the tech team home. They had the right tools, a collaboration kit and the like to be able to do that. And we also had a number of folks in our call center who also were able to work remotely from home. And again, they had the appropriate tools to be able to do that. When we shifted the entire organization, another 600 plus people out, we had to really scrabble to get those same tools that IT had used and that the work from home people had to try and keep that collaboration, that kind of Hollard family piece together, because we were so used to that all being in the same building, seeing each other every day. A lot of business problems would have been solved at the coffee machine or the water cooler or the stairs. So a rapid rollout of the collaboration tech, like what we're using here today, along with some other tools, really has helped us there. Have we seen an uplift in productivity? Generally, I think the answer is yes. because what we're seeing is we're seeing significantly less context switching. People's jobs, whose job to do A, are now able to do A all day, every day, very, very well. And they're not being dragged into the conversations for A+1, B, C, and D. So in some regard, we're seeing an uplift. We're seeing customer experience going up because they're not being handed around our office. We're having a single phone call into our call center agents who are owning the experience all the way to the end. So we're seeing an uplift also on internal accountability. In other areas, though, where digitization is just not possible, clearly there is a significant downside because the jobs and the roles that they have just can't, they can't be supported significantly by technology, because to do them you need to be with your team in the building. So I think as we start to look at what does our new operating model look like going forward, we're going to have some roles and some functions that firmly need to be inside a building or in a virtual building of some description with better tools and equipment, and we'll have others that will just embrace and enjoy the working from home.
All right. It's good to hear some increased or improvement in customer experience in some of those roles. That's a great point of value. All right, so one of the other questions we have here from Asa Cox is for all the panellists. Are the panellists or your clients seeing the opportunity to innovate, for example, with AI or automation? Or is the focus on accelerating defined technology roadmaps for transformation?
I'm happy to take that one.
Great, thank you.
What we've seen is a combination of both. So in some cases, there's been maybe a hold on some form of digital transformation strategy, and they're like, okay, let's continue with this and let's accelerate this. In some cases, there's obviously been organizations that have put it on hold, but in others, particularly if you're distributed via intermediated channels that rely on face-to-face interaction, those are the ones that are like, okay, new plan, let's figure out what this new plan is and going with something completely new. So I think we're seeing a combination of those. Sorry that it's not a definitive answer for you, Asa, but yeah, there's a combination of accelerating current plans and just creating a completely new one.
Yeah, I'll add to that. We're seeing the same thing. So whatever organizations are that we deal with, they're just saying, hurry up, deliver that. We don't want that to take years anymore. Hurry up, get it done, because that's the foundation. But in addition, we want to innovate to deliver these claims experiences or speed up this new business opportunity or a new digital distribution partner with a new player in the ecosystem. So we're seeing it additive.
Great. And Dan?
I think if I can add, like they should be a combination of the two anyway. Any transformation roadmap and journey, I think, needs to leverage AI and automation to achieve things like straight through processing or low touch, engagement with the customer. So sure, there's the standout sort of chinks in the armor of we don't have a digital form to collect information. But part of any roadmap these days should have AI in the mix to enable, digitizing documents and turning it into structured text or doing natural language processing. So I would sort of stress that they should be part of the roadmap anyway, whether they're in an initial phase or later on. They should be in the mix anyway. And if anything, they're becoming more and more relevant on the roadmap of we need to embed these technologies to, achieve a low touch situation in the organization.
Mm. Okay, now a little bit of our conversation so far has spoken about winners, who we're pitching to be winners coming out of this situation. We have a question here related to that. So if incumbents are on board with digitalisation and searching for solutions for the challenges they face, what's an efficient way for them to attract and work with the winners? So many InsurTechs, but which is the right answer?
I think this is a great question. This is the biggest challenge, I think, for the insurers at the moment globally. There's so much noise about value propositions and vendors in the market and who can solve what and who has runs on the board to do it. And I think this is where there's almost a role in between of a mediator or the consultant or the internal teams that need to be identifying almost a panel of vendors that have been vetted and verified that they can embed and solve a solution. And I think this is the problem in the industry, is that there's so many offerings out there and there's so many different InsurTechs. It's hard for an incumbent to make the right decision. So I don't think it's a case that the InsurTech can necessarily solve it. It's a middle layer party that you need to help embed and make that verified choice to solve a problem.
Yeah, do you have views on that, Jamie?
I kind of agree. If I think about where I've come from, having some certainty behind the longevity and the future roadmap of an InsurTech would certainly help. Being part of an ecosystem like this, or being part of a broader that consultative part to help the carriers work out this is the best piece of technology for you. And we've also done the diligence on the company and its structure and its funding and the like would certainly help those that are going to be successful be successful. It's going to be very hard for carriers to kind of put all of their eggs into one basket, even if it's only for one of those red dots that I talked about for an InsurTech that might be flash in the pan.
Yeah, which certainly does speak to the ecosystem approach, which a few of you have mentioned earlier. Hence, Insurtech Australia as an ecosystem, great sounding board for those looking to search for the winners. All right, so a challenging question here around the phrase digital transformation. It's been a buzz phrase in the past few years. In your words, what does digital transformation mean? And how do we shorten the perceived perception that that transformation journey is going to take 2 to 3 years?
I'll take a stab at that. That's an interesting question, because it's something that everybody has a certain perception on. Like you're saying, like it can be a 2 to 3 year journey. I'll come back to what I said before around, if we can all focus in on solving a particular, like digital transformation is actually solving a bunch of small problems that the customer has, or internally you have as an organization if you're an insurer, and working out what's the best digital solution to use in order to solve that problem. And if we tackle it like that, and then we deliver the first, call it a minimum viable product or proof of value, we deliver that and then we iterate from there, and that becomes a transformation rather than a 3-year process of, hey, we're going to create this massive consulting plan that then's going to take 3 years to actually hit our website, but it's going to be there eventually. Like that's the type of process we need to kick to the curb and take an iterative approach. I think that's probably the best way to look at almost it's rephrasing what we determine digital transformation.
I think if I can jump in there, it's a great point, Michael, and I sort of touched on it at the start about the competition accelerating in transformation. So the tempo at which transformation or embedment of solutions into the market, I think, is going to accelerate because there's new normal that's been set, and as Annette said, it's not going to snap back to where it was before, and the speed of competition in the marketplace is going to dictate that. And I think a lot of the incumbents or insurers are probably as well not sure on 3 to 5 year transformation plans, because there's so much M&A or merger and acquisition movement. There's so much decentralization or changes in the market. I mean, can you really stick around for 3 to 5 years to wait to meet the expectation of the consumer, especially when there's so much pressure, in profit and ratio in the market? So I think, like we've all touched on, it's got to be an iterative approach and delivering value that's measured into the business, and almost for large organizations. And I mean, it's a bit of a tearaway term, but being agile in a sense of, it's okay to have a roadmap and a plan of what you're going to do, but it's okay to also pivot that based on if you're not identifying value out of what you're doing, or to reallocate budgets into the right areas that are delivering value. So I'm hoping as an industry on the incumbent side, this whole 3 to 5 year view will start going out the window due to uncertainty and due to the tempo increase at which these challenges need to be met in the market.
Great, thanks, Dan. Jamie and Annette, did you have a different phrase around digital transformation that you wanted to throw in here?
Yeah,
You go, Annette.
I think it's fine to have a longer term vision of how to get from clunky overnight batch jobs to something that's real time and microservice driven, so you can keep plugging and playing as things evolve. So I think that's okay to have that umbrella approach, but you can very easily, pretty well all InsurTechs work on week-long sprints, sometimes daily sprints. So you look at the outcome and then you sprint it, and then you pivot again and work on the next outcome, sprint it. And this is where the proof of value comes in very quickly. So you can get a new product out to market in days or weeks. You don't have to wait months. You can actually get 10 products out, 10 versions of the same product out, and then see which one has got the greatest uptake. You've got time to look at the data and see where are the claims profitable for you, or, where are you going to put your marketing dollars on which one of those 10, or are you going to shut down 8 versions of that product because they didn't have the right uptake? So yeah, the speed of that cycle is days and weeks now. It does not need to be months and years. And so the umbrella might be big, but you can see that proof of value with decisions every week.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's also, you're right, Dan, having a 3-year roadmap is great. But if that's so heavily locked in to an underpinning architecture, you've got no agility and no ability to pivot. So by the time you got to the end of there, you've probably missed the boat many times. So the ability to pivot in there is absolutely key. And I think there's a bit of a pendulum swing coming as well, because digital transformation, there's 2 parts to that. There's the digitization, that's the tech, of course, but then there's the transformation around what does the business need to be able to do going forward. And I think in the past you would have had a whole monolithic set of business requirements, and then they might go out and look for tech that might help feed those. And I think we're just seeing a bit of a pendulum swing from technology-enabled business transformation rather than business transformation through tech with technology. So you're seeing off-the-shelf stuff. You're seeing a more greater uptake of InsurTech to be able to say, well, bolt these 5 things together, and then we'll mold our business around the tech. And I think having a roadmap and a landscape that supports that is going to then allow you to do that pivoting or that daily releasing or quarterly, and move away from having to throw it all away and start again.
Jamie, I think that's a great point. One of the things we sort of believe or see a little bit is, there's a saying of, life imitates art more than art imitates life. And it's almost like business is imitating technology more than technology is imitating business.
Yeah.
So, things like microservice architectures, distributed workforces, de-siloed ways of working, data-driven sort of organizations. These are all technology buzzword compliant pieces, but it's almost like the organizations are now mimicking the technology stack that sits behind them. So it's interesting times ahead.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I wonder if the 2 to 3 year transformation journey, which possibly many of us have experienced within incumbent land, much of that comes back to your point, Jamie, where a business case has probably been developed, then it's been locked in stone. No one can move outside of those requirements at any stage, which is not the new world at all. It's not how tech lives and breathes now anyway. So I think that'll be a challenge for some to move beyond that and to be a bit more flexible. All right, we have a specific question here from Nikki around what are the main challenges with the insurer/broker B2B relationship within the COVID crisis?
I'll add a little bit of flavour. I guess brokers that are running on-premise systems where everyone's got to be in an office premise and log in to do business, it's going to be under pressure due to COVID. I think, more than ever, organisations have to be using cloud-based software that, can do B2B transactions, and they can distribute their teams, and more so than ever, get the broker in the field or working from home in a distributed sense. So just adding a bit of flavour, I think, like anything, an organisation that has to be centralised and work out of a desktop-based delivered technology platform is going to come under pressure, or where they don't have even desktop solutions, it's sort of cobbled together manila folders. There's huge pressure there in the broker market, and there's a lot of brokers that still work like that. So I think, there's ever increasing pressure in that space.
Okay, any other reflections from the other panelists on that specific question? No? Okay, so let's move on to the next one. I think we have time for one more. And perhaps a question on the lips of many. Digital transformation ties directly into disaster recovery and business continuity. Why did the insurance industry need a global pandemic crisis to act?
Go, Jamie.
Jamie, I want to jump in just before you go, if that's okay. But what we've seen this for the last few years, where business is profitable, and when business is profitable, it's sometimes easy to get complacent and to not innovate and do anything new, and that's probably why there's been, or one of the reasons why I think that there has been a lack of digital transformation in the insurance space. But now, when there's a forcing function, that being, okay, we can't meet face to face, and our workforce is distributed, that we have to go and innovate, and that would be my 2 cents. But obviously, Jamie, you are working at an insurer, so you will have more insight than me.
Yeah, look, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think in the good times, there's less need to go back and look at yourself in the mirror. I mean, you're growing, and you're making cash. And I think, us, probably like many other insurers as well, we first went into DR mode as well, and that meant we spun up our DR sites. We were ready to go and use our exact operating model that we had in our existing building, but out of another location, and we blew the dust off of all of our processes and procedures, and we were up and running, and we were patting ourselves on the back for a little bit. And then we realized, wow, this isn't DR, this is more broader BCP, and we've actually got to have another operating model spun up very quickly. And like many other organizations, have been able to be lucky enough to have 95% of their workforce go and work from home. To your point at the very beginning, this certainly drove our digitization strategy from a point of our work from home, but it is really just the first part of a much longer journey, because all we've really done is take the tools that we had in the office and allow them to be now operate from home. And we still rely quite heavily on the goodwill of the staff, and there is some goodwill in the community as well, to accept that they're still going to get a service, or they're still going to work and adjust their own conditions. But I think with a significantly better tools over time, you're going to really see that digitization tick. And then you may well see that you have to go back and look at what does DR really mean for us, and what does BCP really mean for us. It doesn't mean another building in another state.
Yeah. Thanks, Jamie. Now we are out of time. Rita's going to jump back on in a moment and join us. Thank you, Dan, Annette, Mike, and Jamie. Really great discussion. And I know we probably could have gone for another hour or so, but I appreciate your views and your input and your time spent with us today. And thank you very much to the audience members for your questions and comments. That was really, really helpful. So my takeaways is around Band-Aids and rubber bands. That's what I'm labeling this. So the rubber bands are the snapback, which we know isn't going to happen. The Band-Aids are what's going on behind the scenes, but hopefully we seek to transform that. So thanks again, and over to you, Rita.
Thanks,
Thank you.
I don't have much additional to say except to thank you sincerely, and to thank all of the panelists Dan, Annette, Mike, Jamie, for your insights. There was so much content there. I agree, we could have gone for hours more, and maybe we'll need to revisit it in another couple of months and see how our responses might actually differ to the way the world has changed at that point. There are a couple of questions that didn't get answered, so we'll try and get back to you. And if you do have additional questions, please just come through to us, let us know. Or if you'd like to get in touch with any of the panellists, please do reach out as well. Also, we'd love to hear feedback. So get in touch with us with any feedback or suggestions for future sort of topics that you'd like to hear more about, or if you want to hear more about membership or partnership with Insurtech Australia, we're always happy to chat about that too. So we really hope to see you at one of our future virtual events. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, team. Bye-bye.